7 days surviving alone on a deserted island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. No electricity, no signal, only leaves, coconuts, and a few wild boars eyeing him like a mobile buffet. Sander's survival journey is both thrilling and laugh-out-loud ironic, filled with unexpected twists. Let's follow along. On a remote, uninhabited island, a rugged-looking man appears on a yacht as if he were taking part in a real-life survival game. The boat speeds across the water like a jet ski before docking smoothly at the shore. None other than Sander himself, a man determined to become a true survival expert. He waves goodbye to the stylish boat driver, then heads deeper into the island, holding a bow and arrows as though he has just stepped out of a historical epic, blended with modern survival adventure. After a few steps of casual exploration, almost like a picnic stroll, he discovers clusters of poisonous spider nests spread everywhere. One careless move, and it could be game over, yet he keeps smiling as if nothing has happened. Next, he notices what seems to be a useless muddy puddle, but it turns out to be a potentially life-saving water source. With a not afraid of a stomachache spirit, he takes a cautious taste. Venturing further, he discovers a shipwreck lying along the shore. Surrounding it are dozens of coconut trees, and a precious natural source of water and food. Without hesitation, he chops open a coconut and drinks deeply, refreshed. As he continues exploring, he finds many plastic bottles washed ashore. What appears to be trash turns out to be a useful survival combo. Tools and water containers all in one. Some bottles even contain rainwater. He takes a sip and temporarily trusts that the water has been sterilized by the heavens. After carefully surveying the area, he chooses a shaded patch of land beneath the trees where the breeze blows gently like natural air conditioning and decides to set up camp there because it offers the perfect right time and right place. He opens his backpack and shows off his survival gear, a camera to document the journey, a medical first aid kit, a power bank, a fire starting kit, fishing hooks, and line. He also has a hammock to avoid fire ants and sleep comfortably, a pillow and bedsheet to keep warm at night. A titanium pot for cooking, a water filter straw, and especially a bow and arrows, along with a homemade spear gun crafted from a bicycle tire. Feeling thirsty, he returns to the muddy puddle and tests the water using his filter straw. The water still has a strong odor, but with no other choice, he fills a bottle to bring back. Afterwards, he hangs his hammock, mixes coffee with coconut water, and leisurely sips it in the forest, like a true gentleman survivor. Next, he enters the forest to collect vines and cut branches to build a shelter. By the sea, he digs a hole and buries a bottle of muddy water to experiment with evaporation-based water filtration. He constructs an A-frame structure, covers it with coconut leaves for a roof, and ties everything securely with vines. The shelter may not be perfect, but it is enough to withstand light rain. As evening gradually falls, he continues reinforcing the shelter. Although he knows it is not completely waterproof, he still hopes that heavy rain will stay away. At the end of the first day, he lies swaying gently in his hammock, enjoying sleep in the heart of nature. Just as he was drifting into a dream, he was startled awake by strange noises in the bushes, as if someone were whispering his name. His heart pounded wildly, but he forced himself to remain calm until dawn. The next morning, a light rain began to fall. He stayed inside the shelter, curling up to avoid getting wet, while cleverly using plastic bottles to collect rainwater. The rain provided him with an additional source of precious clean water. When daylight fully broke, he drank a coconut to quench his thirst and brewed some coffee. A simple, Robinson-style breakfast, yet full of flavor. With a full stomach, he continued reinforcing the shelter, adding more leaves and vines. On his way to search for food, he picked up a piece of dry bamboo that had drifted ashore and brought it back to craft a fire-starting tool. He began drilling into the bamboo, creating friction with sawdust and dry leaves. After many attempts, with smoke rising and fading again and again, the flame finally burst to life. Joy overwhelmed him as he officially mastered fire on the deserted island. However, the joy of making fire did not last long before night fell once more. Strange rustling sounds echoed through the forest again, keeping Sander tossing and turning all night. In the pitch-black darkness, every sound seemed far more frightening than usual. Lying in his hammock, eyes wide open toward the tree shadows, he tried to reassure himself that it was only the wind and insects. The following morning, with dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep, he began improving his water filtration system. He placed burnt charcoal into a plastic bottle, added sand and gravel, and created a homemade water filter. When he poured dirty water through it, the water that flowed out was noticeably clearer than before. Even so, to ensure safety, he still boiled the water in his titanium pot for about 15 minutes before drinking it. Surrounded by the vast sea and sky, holding a cup of warm water in his hands, he felt somewhat relieved. 2 days passed, and his diet consisted mainly of coconut flesh and coconut water. Hunger began pushing him to search for a more energy-rich food source. He prepared his fishing line, attached a hook to a plastic bottle to use as a float, and headed out to the sea. After picking up a few shellfish clinging to rocks for bait, he cast his line and waited. While waiting for a bite, he walked along the forest's edge when he suddenly heard the sound of a wild boar. An adult boar stood not far away, staring at him intently. Without his bow and arrows, his only weapon at that moment was his composure. Unwilling to take risks, he slowly retreated and returned to the safety of the beach. Soon after, he decided to use his homemade spear gun. Assembling it quickly, he dived into the water. After a short search, he spotted his target and launched the spear accurately, catching a fairly large fish. Not stopping there, he continued diving and caught another one. 2 fish were enough for a hearty meal after many days of eating nothing but coconuts. On his way back, he picked up a driftwood plank, perfect for use as a cutting board. He also gathered some leaves and a piece of coral. Back at camp, he cleaned the fish, wrapped them in leaves, tied them with vines, and placed them over the glowing embers to grill. The aroma of cooking fish drifted through the sea breeze, making him even more eager. When the fish turned golden, he sat by the beach, savoring each bite of grilled fish with coconut flesh and coconut water. After the meal, he took out his bow and practiced shooting, sharpening his skills in case he might need them. Not wanting to miss the opportunity to hunt on land, he returned to the area where he had previously encountered the wild boar and set up a simple trap using a fishing hook and suspended bait. Although success was uncertain, he still hoped to improve his food supply. As evening fell, he stood watching the sunset spread across the ocean. But the wind began to shift, a sign that rain was approaching. He hurried back to camp, preparing dry firewood and reinforcing the shelter's roof. When night came, heavy rain poured down. Fortunately, the shelter remained relatively dry. The next morning, he was delighted to see that the rain-collecting bottles were full. The clean water source gave him greater peace of mind. Holding his homemade spear gun, but he reintroduced its structure, entirely recycled from an old bicycle, a testament to his remarkable creativity. He returned to the sea and quickly caught another fish. While cleaning it, he accidentally scratched his hand slightly, though it was nothing serious. As usual, he wrapped the fish in leaves and grilled it over glowing embers. After eating, he carried his bow into the forest in search of hunting opportunities. This time, he encountered the wild boar again. But behind it was a small piglet. Seeing the mother and her young together, he hesitated, then decided not to shoot. That choice showed that, even in a survival journey, he still retained his compassion. Rain came once more. He took the opportunity to collect additional rainwater, storing it for the days ahead. At night, he lit a fire to keep warm, sitting under the moonlight, accompanied by the steady sound of ocean waves. The next morning, Sander woke after a restless night, having had to tend the fire constantly and stay alert for rain and wind. Though his body felt somewhat fatigued, he was grateful that the shelter was still standing. After drinking some stored rainwater and eating a bit of coconut flesh, he grabbed his homemade spear and decided to head back to the sea in search of more food. Diving into the clear blue water, he realized that resources were not always abundant. Small fish darted swiftly around him, causing him to miss several times. At moments, it seemed he might return empty-handed, but then he spotted an area where many fish had gathered. With intense focus, he launched his spear accurately and caught a small fish. Persisting, he managed to catch a few more, enough for a modest meal. As he ventured deeper into a rocky crevice along the shore, he felt the air grow stifling and chose to turn back, avoiding unnecessary risk. On his way back to the beach, he once again saw several piglets foraging for food. And the sight made him hesitate even more whenever he considered hunting on land. Back at camp, he cleaned the fish he had caught, wrapped them in leaves, and grilled them over hot embers. The aroma spread through the quiet atmosphere of the deserted island. While eating, he noticed the silhouette of the mother boar watching from a distance. Perhaps they had grown accustomed to his presence, though they still kept a safe distance. In the afternoon, he gathered more dry firewood to store for later use. The island's weather was unpredictable, so keeping the fire going was always a top priority. When night fell, he lay in his hammock, listening to the sound of the waves and the wind blowing through the treetops. Even without electricity or internet, That moment brought him a special sense of peace. The following morning, dark clouds gathered, signaling another incoming rainstorm. But taking advantage of the time before the heavy rain began, he headed out to the sea once more. After searching for a while, he caught a fairly large black fish. As usual, the meal was prepared in his familiar way, cleaned, wrapped in leaves, and grilled over the embers. After eating, he carried his spear along the shoreline, hoping to find something different. At one point, he thought he had discovered a major catch, but it turned out to be nothing more than a drifting coconut. After many days of eating coconuts, he was starting to grow tired of them, yet he still had to make use of the available food source. Just then, he unexpectedly encountered a group of local children collecting coconuts. They climbed the trees swiftly and greeted him in a friendly manner. With their help, he was invited to drink fresh coconut water and had a brief chance to chat. The encounter brought a touch of liveliness to his otherwise solitary journey. That evening, he went to the sea with the children. They swam and caught fish skillfully. Sander joined in and was lucky enough to catch a fairly large shrimp. After many days of living mainly on coconuts, a meal with shrimp and fish felt more special than ever. Returning to camp, he grilled the shrimp over glowing embers. The natural sweetness of the seafood moved him deeply, as if he had just overcome a long and challenging stretch. After the meal, he lay in his hammock, gazing at the star-filled sky, quietly reflecting on the journey he had been through. 6 days passed with a full range of emotions, from anxiety and fear to joy when he secured food and clean water. Each day on the island was a lesson in adaptation and patience. On the final day of the challenge, Sander woke at the first light of dawn. After a night of constantly tending the fire to guard against rain and wind, his face showed signs of fatigue, yet his eyes remained determined. The morning sky still carried gray clouds, suggesting the weather was not entirely stable. As the sun rose high, the boat arrived to take him back to the mainland. Sander packed his belongings neatly and carefully extinguished the fire to avoid harming the environment. Before leaving, he stood silently, looking back at the island. In the distance, the vast blue sea stretched endlessly, with schools of fish swimming playfully as if offering a farewell. And the 7-day survival journey on the deserted island officially came to an end,